I wanted to put on a listening circle, and I wanted to do an official one. But when time came to actually get that going, the people who are in charge of running the listening circles told me, sorry, no thank you, we are not doing a listening circle at Rio this year. And took a few days on that and decided, you know what, fine, I'll do my own. So this Monday, last Monday actually, I guess, looking at it like that, I had the first of, I'm thinking of doing another one in January, probably will. So 2 listening circles. Only like 4 people showed up, but we still had a really good discussion about what they liked about Rio, and I used the same questions that were used in the past. And we just talked about Rio. I wrote down some stuff about what they had said, and it was interesting. One of the comments that actually was kind of repeated both last year and this year was about how awesome the teachers are and how much they care about the students and put in all this extra effort and time to help out students on their lunch breaks and after school when they don't need to. And that was a huge positive that I think last year it was repeated at least 3 times, and this year with almost every question that was brought up about how great teachers are. And another thing that was brought up kind of as something that has been talked about in education a lot was teaching to the test, how that's still an issue in some classes, and how it doesn't allow students to learn about the application necessarily of the skills they're learning, or what skills they're learning by learning, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but you know what I mean. When you're like, if you read Great Gatsby in English, you're also, when you write an essay, you're learning how to critically think and how to apply what you've learned and write, and those are important skills. And because we're teaching so much to test, students have said that they're not absorbing as much of the knowledge that they could have been if it was more of a test as an assessment of what you've learned rather than the be-all, end-all, this is what your grade will be. And yeah, and they also talked about our music program and how we have a great music program and how they wish there would be more sports. And all these things were kind of echoed from last year. It was a lot of the same stuff, but hopefully we'll get a wider view when I have the second one in January. And overall, I think the comments were kind of what I had expected to hear, but it's good to have the outreach to the students and talk about with them what they want instead of just assuming that know what they want.
So we're open for questions, if you have some questions for Randy.
Where are the arts in this thing?
You were brought up in the listening circle, and arts classes were invited, but not a lot of people showed up, so.
So when you say arts, is it visual arts, studio arts?
Visual arts, performing arts, music. So that would be like ceramics and basic drawing and painting, and then also drama and the music program.
I think that one of the things I wanted to ask you about, out of all of the senior projects, I think you had the most roadblocks to things going on. And
It's hard to get emails back.
I tried to be as encouraging to you as possible that this is kind of the way it goes in education, and that so that you would understand that it's not an unusual task. What were your thoughts as you were going through, and every time you went to do something, there was something else that would come up and stop you from doing it?
A lot of mental screaming, but I mean, at some point, I think after the second time I didn't get an email back after emailing someone, I was just kind of like, all right, I'm just going to keep emailing them until someone replies, and hopefully I'll get something out of that. But definitely taught me perseverance. I had to learn that you got to keep going no matter what, otherwise you don't end up with the result.
So you had 4 people show up at the first one. So how do you think you might want to improve, or some ideas about the next one?
Well, I think part of the problem was it was the day that we immediately got back from break, so I feel like that was part of it. But besides scheduling it at a different kind of time, more outreach, I thought that I had done enough, but maybe I didn't. I can put up posters. I didn't put up posters because, I mean, I didn't think of it as something necessary, but I guess next time that's what I'll be doing.
Send your notes.
Yeah, I actually thought about that with the first one, but then I ended up not having enough money to go out and buy food,
Yeah.
so,
I can help you do that, so next time.
yes.
So could you explain the process a little more? So there's this LCAP funds or state funds? Or federal funds and then?
I'm on the LCAP, so what
Yeah.
So-
the local control funding formula, it's a new formula that comes down from the state.
Okay.
With a base funding that comes to all schools based on population and attendance. Extra money comes if you've got high need groups, specifically English language learners, poverty, defined as partial payment or full payment for school lunches, and then foster. And in that group, they're adding homeless, although pretty much any child that's homeless is going to fit in one of those three groups, if not more.
And they'll always say that they're homeless.
Right. So the parent advisory committee is a group of more than parents that advises the school districts on how to spend specifically supplemental funds that the schools get, the extra funding that they get for the districts for those particular groups, which would explain exactly why a student from Rio would be getting a roadblock about the listening circles because they're not necessarily interested in a school that doesn't fit those three categories.
Which gets to the question I was going to ask is, even if you had robust participation in the listening circle, what would you expect? Where would you take it? In other words, so now you get all this information, you take it back to the parent committee that
I
you
think it's
advise
to take
the
it to the,
district? Is that
There are
fair?
some very general things and overall things that the parent advisory committee is examining. It will still be of value, any information that comes.
But that's where it goes, but back to the parent. I'm just wondering where the information that you collect in the
yeah,
listening circle.
it would definitely go to the parent action committee, but then I mean also if teachers came, it could help them because they're getting information straight from the students instead of like a huge roundabout through the people who did the listening circle, the parent action committee, and then back around to the teachers. So I think just the mere act of listening to what the students have to say can be a huge help.
So you're trying to get teachers in your next one.
You might want to actually invite the administrators or the ones that are writing our upcoming WASP report. And this would be a really good thing for them to just talk about. The other thing is though, I don't know if you thought about this when you were contacting the district. Although we have a smaller population than the students they'd like to serve in the supplemental funds, we still have an incredible increase since I've been here in free and reduced lunches, which means that our population is struggling more than it used to. And I'm talking about an exponential explosion. You know, we might have talked about, you know, like 6 or 7 or 12 or 14 kids in my first couple of years here. But in the time that I've been here, I would say that we have, it's a huge multiplier now. So there is a large chunk of kids here who don't necessarily talk about it because of the opposite end of the spectrum that's on our campus. But there's a lot of kids who are in need, who don't necessarily wish to be recognized. Every year I have to talk to the counseling office to find out if there's something that Civitas can do about caps and gowns for graduating seniors. Try to have kids recycle their gowns, and also, you know, like if we can pay for a couple of kids to get, you know, caps and gowns, et cetera, and to try to talk Jostens to come into it as much as we buy from them to cough up some money for it. But this is like, you know, it's a growing problem that I've seen happen over the last few years. So.
Do you know what percentage of our school is free and reduced lunch now?
I don't know, the VPs would know, but all I know is it's something like, I want to say something like, you know, if there were 20 kids when I first got here, there's 200 kids now. So I mean, it's that kind of a thing. It's exponential for this campus, because you would assume that with our, you know, with our demographics, that those kids really just aren't talking. I mean, you're talking to counselors, they're not admitting because, well, first of all, they're not like the rest of the kids on campus.
It's in the stats they gave us, it's higher than you'd expect. That's what we had noticed, but it's not high enough to make it an LCAP school.
Yeah, we're not like
Yeah,
Messina
yeah.
or San
But I was just
Bernardino,
curious what the
those schools that-
percentages are like now, yeah.
I don't remember.
And just because they qualify doesn't mean that they
That they also use it.
that they use it, right?
A lot of the
Yeah.
kids want it.
Aren't they building a performing arts center here at this school?
They are.
Mhm.
That was with, oh gosh, I can't remember exactly what the number was, but there was a measure passed that gave a bunch of money to several schools, and that's how Arden built their new auditorium, and we're using it to build a performing arts center.
So does LCAP have anything to do with the performing arts center that's going to be built here?
No.
Do they just build a center, and how do they put curtains and lighting and all of that stuff?
That stuff's all included in the plan for the performing arts center.
Yeah, the Performing Arts Center is part of a bond measure. So the funding for the Performing Arts Center and all of that is from a bond, which is bond that was passed inside the district, and that's separate from the LCAP money, which comes from the state.
El Camino's also building a
Yeah,
performing
they've
arts
got
center.
money as well.
As part of the bond measure that was passed, every high school is getting a signature project that each high school decides. So it's interesting to find out how the different pots of money, and there are lots of different pots of money, and the limitations and requirements on being able to use them, and what can fund what and what can't fund other things.
So was there anything in the listening circle, the mock listening circle, that you kind of surprised you about what the students were saying?
Not really, I kind of considered, and a lot of it was repeats from last year, like the exact same thing. They definitely, actually there was one thing, it might have just been because of who showed up, but they talked a lot about sports. And of course I reminded them that we did have the discussions in school board meetings about getting like turf, I think, for the field, and then one where I was talking about putting up lights and pulling people for that, so I mentioned that. But there was a lot of focus on sports more than I would have thought, considering I was trying to get them to talk about academics.
Do you know if the counselors still do exit interviews with seniors? Or do?
I'm actually not sure.
Yeah, I mean, there'd be overlap, obviously, in the information.
Yeah.
So, Madeline, you've come to at least a handful of these LCAP meetings, and one of the questions the state is faced with right now is whether or not these plans that all of the school districts have to develop are an exercise in futility. It's a question that's been posed of whether or not the intention of getting the community actively involved in these decisions has not happened because of the, as you pointed out, huge amount of information that is needed. I would just love, from your opinion, as a student trying to absorb all of this information and trying to have a focus, that was, explain what do you think about that particular question?
I think it was definitely a lot to absorb, and I still haven't gotten everything. Like, there are still things someone will mention, I'm like, wait, what, that was included? I didn't know that. But I mean, personally, maybe it's just because I'm really interested in politics, and I think they're, like, super cool. I find it worth it, and especially because this is the stuff that's impacting me every single day when I show up at school. Like, and people less fortunate than me, it's definitely impacting them, like the low income and the English language learners in the foster youth. It has a huge impact on them, like bigger than it has on me. And so I just think it's worth it, and I don't know if we can get people to care. I really hope we could, but I don't know if.
So do you think it's a communication problem from?
I mean, part of it, yeah, because like as I told you during our interview, I hadn't heard about any of this before you brought it up to me. But I think part of it definitely is the communication, and the other part is there's a lot of it, and not a lot of people are willing to put in the time and effort to care about it.
I think if you were looking at PTSA, interest out in most of the schools, this school has a pretty high turnout of PTA. But if you go to like Encina, or you go to San Juan, you have to like find ways to like bring those people on campus. You have to do food, you have to do in order to get parent participation. So, those are pretty much the same statistics of voting and political activism. It's the same sort of really the same populations.
All right, any more questions for me? Thanks, Mindy.